Jason Statham walks by a little girl selling artwork for Chemo, and what he does next shocks the entire world. Watch this powerful story of kindness, courage, and the moment that changed everything. Like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on this heartwarming journey. There are certain moments in life when the chaos of the world slows down, when the noise of cars, phones, and deadlines suddenly fades, and in that quiet space, something powerful happens. On a chilly Saturday morning in downtown Los Angeles, where the sidewalks shimmer with the early light and the streets hum with possibility, a little girl named Marisol drew a miracle with her bare hands. She was just 10 years old with wide, dark eyes and a quiet, thoughtful presence. Her face, though pale and framed by a knitted beanie to hide the thinning hair underneath, carried an innocence that refused to give in. She sat cross-legged on the sidewalk outside of the farmer's market on 3rd and Fairfax, a place always crowded with tourists, buskers, and the scent of roasted almonds and kettle corn. Around her was a carefully arranged semicircle of drawings and paintings she had made over the past 2 weeks. Some were done with watercolor, others with crayon or marker, and a few even with old makeup brushes. There were butterflies with glittery wings, portraits of her mom, rainbows, and superheroes flying over hills dotted with wildflowers. Each piece had a small handwritten price tag, $2 or more, to help me fight cancer. She didn't shout. She didn't beg. She just sat there, coloring a new drawing with focus and patience, hoping someone would stop. Her mother, Anna, stood a few feet away with a thermos of coffee in her hand and a protective eye on her daughter, quietly thanking every person who bought a drawing or dropped coins into the old donation jar beside the setup. The morning had barely begun, and already the small stand had drawn curious glances. Some passers-by bought something out of kindness, others just nodded and kept walking, and a few gave that familiar glance, sad, uncomfortable, too afraid to really stop and look. But Marisol didn't blame them. She didn't feel sorry for herself. She didn't want pity. She wanted to live. Her diagnosis had come 3 months earlier, acute lymphoblastic leukemia. The doctors were optimistic. With the right treatment, she had a strong chance of survival. But optimism came with a cost: medication, hospital stays, tests, and most of all, chemotherapy. Even with government assistance and a few modest donations from neighbors, Anna, who worked 2 cleaning jobs just to make ends meet, couldn't afford it all. So Marisol asked if she could help. She didn't want her mom to carry it alone. And art was the one thing that made her feel powerful, even on the hardest days. She drew to feel alive. And that's how she ended up there, on a cold sidewalk, selling sunshine drawn in crayon. The day moved slowly. A couple in their 30s bought a painting of Flying Cat and asked for a picture with her. A woman in yoga gear dropped a $20 bill and gave Anna a quiet hug. And a young man who had just gotten off his bike asked Marisol to draw a portrait of his dog from a photo. She grinned and got to work. Each sale brought a little warmth, a little hope. But they were still so far from what they needed. Her next chemo session was scheduled in just 2 weeks, and they were short by nearly $6,000. Anna didn't say it out loud, but the weight of that truth sat in her chest like a stone. No matter how many drawings they sold, the math didn't lie. Around 3 p.m., when the crowd was thinning and the shadows started to stretch across the sidewalk, Marisol leaned back and looked up at the sky. The clouds had shifted, and a beam of sunlight hit her sketchbook just right, making the colors glow. She took a deep breath, tired but proud. Then it happened. A tall figure approached from the side, dressed in a simple black hoodie, dark jeans, and aviator sunglasses. He moved with the kind of effortless purpose that made people glance twice. Not because he was trying to be seen, but because there was something about him, controlled, calm, and quietly intense. A few people noticed him and whispered. Some even turned their heads completely. Jason Statham. Yes, that Jason Statham. Star of 100 action movies. The guy who could punch through walls on screen and deliver deadpan lines with razor precision. But here he was, walking through a marketplace like any other man, holding a coffee cup and stopping to glance at produce, books, and food stands. He almost walked past the art setup. Almost. He paused just 2 steps beyond the stand, then turned back slowly. His eyes landed on the drawings first, then on the girl behind them. Marisol hadn't looked up yet. She was too focused, adding the final lines to a sketch of a lion with angel wings. But Anna noticed. Her heart skipped. She knew that face. Everyone did. She opened her mouth to say something, but stopped. What did she even say? Jason stepped closer. He crouched down, resting his elbows on his knees to get a better look at the drawings. He didn't speak at first. He just studied them. Really studied them, with the seriousness of someone reading a map to a place he needed to find. Finally, he spoke, his voice deep but gentle. "Did you make these?" Marisol looked up, and her eyes widened, not in fear or nerves, but with honest surprise. She nodded slowly. "Yeah," she said, shy but steady. "They're mine. They're beautiful," Jason replied. "You've got real talent." Marisol smiled. It was the kind of smile that made the whole world feel like it could still be good. "Thanks," she said. He pointed at the sign. "This is all for your chemo." She nodded again. "It helps my mom pay for it." Jason took off his sunglasses. His eyes, now visible, softened as he looked at her. He didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then he reached into his back pocket and pulled out a sleek, black wallet. From it, he unfolded a checkbook. Anna's breath caught in her throat. Jason scribbled something, tore the check free, and handed it to Marisol with both hands. "I want to buy all of them," he said. Anna stepped forward. "Sir, you don't have to." But she stopped cold when she saw the number. The check was for $20,000. Jason turned to Anna. "Let her keep the drawings. She might want to sell more later. Just consider this an investment in her future." Anna's hand trembled as she reached for it. Her voice cracked. Why would you do this?" Jason looked down at Marisol, then back at Anna. "Because sometimes people need someone to remind them that they matter," he said. "And this little warrior deserves every chance she can get." The air stood still. For a moment, the bustling market quieted. Strangers who had noticed him earlier were now frozen in place, watching the exchange with disbelief and awe. Phones came out. Photos snapped, but no one interrupted. Marisol stood up slowly, walked over to Jason, and hugged him without asking. He hugged her back. It wasn't a staged celebrity moment. It wasn't for the cameras. It was a quiet, deeply human gesture between a girl fighting for her life and a man who decided not to walk away. And that would have been enough. But what happened next would shake the internet to its core and rewrite the way thousands of people thought about kindness, fame, and the strength of a child's spirit. News spreads fast these days, too fast sometimes. But every once in a while, it spreads for the right reasons. A teenage girl named Lila, who had been standing a few feet away when Jason Statham wrote that check, had captured the entire moment on her phone. Not the kind of shaky, over-filtered video people usually post for attention. This one was raw, steady, and silent except for a gasp or two from the bystanders. No overlays, no music, just the sound of a child whispering "thank you" to a man who could have walked by like everyone else. By the time Jason walked away from the market that day, the video had already been uploaded with a simple caption. Jason Statham just gave this little girl $20,000 for her chemo. She sells art to help her mom afford it. My heart is in pieces. #RealHero. And by sunset, it had begun to catch fire. Thousands of likes, then tens of thousands, then millions. It was reposted on Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. A few celebrities reshared it without comment, just hearts or tears. Others added their voices. "This is what real strength looks like," one wrote. Not just him, her. By midnight, Marisol's name was trending worldwide. Anna didn't have Twitter. She barely used Facebook except to post updates for close friends and family. But her cousin in Mexico messaged her at 3 a.m. asking if she'd seen El Video de Marisol con el actor. That's how she found out. Anna sat up in bed, staring at the screen of her old phone in disbelief. She tapped link after link, watching clip after clip. At first, she worried about privacy, about what people might say. But as the comments rolled in, her fears melted. This little girl is stronger than most people I know. I lost my sister to cancer last year. This hit me right in the chest. Just donated. Keep fighting, little lion. She scrolled through a sea of kind words, donations, and digital hugs from every corner of the world. There were people from Nigeria, the Philippines, Sweden, Brazil, all saying the same thing in different languages. "We're with you, Marisol." By morning, a woman named Kayla Chung, an entrepreneur and philanthropist who ran a nonprofit focused on supporting children with cancer, reached out directly via email. She'd seen the video through her daughter, who had already drawn Marisol's butterfly painting in her school art class. The email read, "Dear Anna, I saw the video of your daughter. I cried. I'd like to cover all of Marisol's treatment costs. Not just this round, everything going forward. We've done this for other families, and it would be an honor to do the same for yours. No catch, no media circus, just people helping people. Warmly, Kayla." Anna read it 3 times before showing it to Marisol, who was sipping tea on the couch with her sketchbook. The little girl didn't say anything at first. She just blinked at the screen, her pencil hovering in the air. Then her eyes filled with quiet tears. "You mean we don't have to sell the paintings anymore?" she whispered. Anna knelt beside her and held her face in her hands. "No, mi amor, not unless you want to. People are helping us. People believe in you." That same day, the story reached Good Morning America, then CNN, then the Today Show. They all reached out requesting interviews. Some offered to send cars, lights, makeup, stylists. Anna declined them all at first, not because she didn't appreciate the attention, but because she wanted to shield her daughter from the frenzy. But Jason Statham called personally 2 days later. He didn't have to. He'd done his part, but he did anyway. He had watched the story explode. He'd seen the videos, the reactions, the love, and he called Anna just to ask one thing. Would Marisol be okay doing one interview? Just one, with me beside her. Nothing fancy, no spotlight, just us talking. I think people should hear her voice. Anna hesitated. She looked at her daughter, who was coloring a field of stars and sheep on a night sky canvas. "Would you want to do that, Mija?" she asked. Marisol looked up. "With him? Yeah, I'm not scared when he's there." So they agreed. The following Thursday, they met at a small, quiet studio in Burbank. Nothing flashy. No crowd. Just a couple of cameras, 2 chairs, and a soft-spoken host named Malcolm, who had spent 20 years interviewing everyone from Oscar winners to ordinary heroes. Jason wore jeans and a gray sweater. Marisol wore her favorite yellow dress and her knit beanie. The interview lasted 27 minutes. They talked about art, about chemo, about fear, and hope. Jason asked her questions, not scripted ones, but real ones. He listened. He let her explain how each painting had a story. The lion with angel wings was her dad, who had passed when she was 4. The rainbow over the mountain was about the first time she saw snow. The butterfly, that was her, changing. At one point, Jason looked straight into the camera and said, "We live in a world where headlines are filled with violence, division, and pain. But here's this girl, 10 years old, showing us how to fight with crayons and kindness. And if you don't think that's worth your time, then maybe it's time you ask yourself why." The clip was viewed 34 million times in 4 days. Donations to childhood cancer research tripled that week. Kayla Chang's nonprofit launched a new initiative called Marisol's Brushes to provide art supplies and financial aid to other kids battling cancer. Art stores across California pledged free supplies to children in hospitals. And as for Marisol, she kept drawing, not because she needed money anymore, but because the world had begun to ask for her art like it was something sacred. People didn't want it out of pity. They wanted it because it made them feel something. Feel hope. Letters poured in, thousands of them. A mail truck came every 3 days just for her house. One envelope stood out. It was from a boy in Syria named Khaled. He had drawn his own picture of Marisol as a superhero flying through clouds made of sunlight. The note read, "I don't have money, but I have my heart. You made me want to be brave too." She kept that one on her wall. And yet, as the world lifted her on its shoulders, there was still something quietly aching beneath the surface. Something not even Jason or Anna could touch. Marisol knew her battle wasn't over. The treatments were long. The pain came in waves. The hospital visits never got easier. She still threw up, still cried sometimes, still lay awake, wondering if the next test would bring worse news. But now, she wasn't alone. She had the world behind her. She had Jason checking in every few days with a message or a call. Once, he sent her a voice note from the set of a movie. "Oi, little warrior. Thought you'd like to know I scared a grown man off a rooftop today in your name." He screamed like a baby. You'd have laughed your head off. She did laugh. Loud. That became their thing. Jason would tell her something funny from wherever he was filming, and she'd draw something inspired by it. A cartoon, a silly sketch, a tiny comic strip. He kept every single one in a binder he carried in his trailer. And so, while the world marveled at the generosity of one man, the strength of one girl, and the magic of a moment caught on camera, something even more powerful was unfolding just beneath the surface. Something that would soon lead to an impossible offer. An offer that would test everything Marisol believed about life, dreams, and herself. Marisol never expected the world to know her name. She never asked to be famous. She never dreamed of being on television or having her drawings shared by millions or receiving letters from kids in faraway countries she could barely point to on a map. And yet, the moment Jason Statham stopped to buy her artwork, her life had split into two chapters, before and after. But no one, not even Jason, could have predicted what would come next. It happened on a cloudy Tuesday afternoon, exactly 3 weeks after the interview with Jason aired. Anna was folding laundry when she heard a soft knock at the front door. She opened it to find a sharply dressed woman with a badge that read Warner Brothers Studios, Talent and Youth Outreach. She held a thick envelope, smiled warmly, and asked, "Is Marisol home?" At first, Anna assumed it was more fan mail or maybe a request for a local art exhibit. But the woman handed her the envelope and explained, "We'd like to invite Marisol to be a featured artist and guest speaker at this year's International Children's Arts and Film Gala in London. Her story has moved millions, and the board unanimously agreed. She deserves this." Anna blinked, her hands trembling as she flipped the envelope open. Inside was a letter on formal stationery with the studio's logo, along with plane tickets, hotel reservations, and an honorarium for Marisol's work, $15,000. Marisol, who had been sketching a giraffe with roller skates in the living room, looked up when her mother called her name. "They want me to speak?" she asked, her eyebrows raised in quiet panic. In front of people, Anna nodded, sitting beside her. "It's in London, mi amor. They want to fly us there. You'd share your art, your story, only if you want to." Marisol's stomach twisted. The thought of being on stage in front of a crowd made her hands go cold. She was brave when it came to needles, scans, and surgeries. But a microphone? That was another battle entirely. I don't think I can do that," she whispered. Jason called that night. He had already heard the news. His friend from the studio had filled him in. "I told them you'd probably say no at first," he said, laughing softly. "But I also told them you'd change your mind." "Why?" she asked. "Why would I change it?" "Because you don't even know how strong you are yet," Jason said. "But you will." There was silence on the line. Then, Marisol asked something she hadn't said to anyone before. "What if I mess it up? What if I forget my words? What if people laugh?" Jason paused. "Then I'll be there. I'll sit in the front row and make a face so mean, no one dares laugh." Marisol giggled. "And if you still feel scared," he continued, "just look for me. I'll be the bald guy with tears in his eyes and a sketchbook full of your drawings." So, 2 weeks later, against every instinct in her tiny body, Marisol agreed. They flew to London in early May. The plane ride was long, but her eyes never left the window. She watched clouds roll by like cotton oceans and drew them in her sketchbook. When they landed, there was a black car waiting at Heathrow, holding a sign that read, "Marisol, guest of honor." Jason met them at the hotel lobby. He'd flown in from filming in Prague just to be there. No assistants, no entourage, just him. Marisol ran up and hugged him before saying anything. "You came." "Of course I did," he said. "Wouldn't miss it." The event was being held at the Royal Opera House, an ornate venue with gold trim, chandeliers, and velvet curtains. The inside looked like something out of a fairy tale. Anna wore a borrowed gown. Marisol wore a simple blue dress with her knit beanie and a new necklace Jason had given her that morning, a tiny silver butterfly. As the night unfolded, guests mingled, sipped sparkling drinks, and browsed the gallery where Marisol's artwork hung next to children's paintings from India, Australia, Canada, and more. But her section drew the biggest crowd. People stood silently in front of her lion with wings, her rainbow over snow-capped mountains, her portrait of a bald Jason Statham in a pink tutu. Even celebrities in attendance laughed at that one. Then came the moment she had been dreading. The host walked to the stage and announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome tonight's youngest featured artist. She has captured the world's heart, not just with her courage, but with her colors. From Los Angeles, California, Miss Marisol Alvarez." Marisol froze behind the curtain. Her knees wobbled. Her throat went dry. She glanced back at Anna, who squeezed her hand. But it wasn't enough. Her body just wouldn't move. Then Jason leaned in. "You're scared," he whispered. "That's good. That means this matters." She looked up at him, her eyes wide and wet. "You remember what I told you?" She nodded. "Then go show them what courage looks like." And just like that, she walked. Step by step, her tiny shoes clicked across the stage. The spotlight warmed her face. She reached the microphone, looked out at hundreds of expectant faces, and nearly choked. But then she saw him. Jason, in the front row, with his hands clasped together, his eyes locked on hers. He gave the slightest nod. She took a breath and spoke. It wasn't loud. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. She told them about being sick, about drawing to escape, about not wanting to be a sad kid with cancer, but a girl who made people feel something. She spoke for 5 minutes, her voice cracking only once. When she finished, the room erupted into a standing ovation. Jason stood too, wiping his face with the back of his hand. Later that night, as she stood beside her artwork, a tall man with gray hair approached. He wore a dark blue suit and had the kind of calm, powerful energy that filled a room before he even spoke. "Marisol," he said warmly, shaking her hand. "My name's Thomas Whitmore. I run one of the largest animation studios in the world, and I'd like to make you an offer." Anna blinked. "An offer?" Thomas smiled. "We'd like to option your artwork, this world you've built, for a new animated series. You'd be credited as lead creative. We'll assign artists to help develop it. But your vision, your colors, your spirit, that's what we want. We'll also set up a college trust in your name. Full ride, anywhere you choose." Jason stepped closer, just in time to see the shock on Marisol's face. "Would you be interested?" Thomas asked gently. Marisol looked at Jason, then at her mom, then back at Thomas, and nodded. The studio deal changed everything again. Marisol went from being a name whispered in YouTube comment sections and news headlines to being a name printed on studio contracts. She was still only 10 years old, still battling cancer, still doodling in the margins of her notebooks. But now, executives from one of the biggest animation companies in the world were flying across the globe to hear her ideas. It wasn't about money. Anna made that clear from the beginning. They didn't want her overexposed. No exploitative merchandising deals. No pushing her into deadlines she couldn't handle. But Thomas Whitmore had promised, "We will protect her. We'll build around her, not the other way around." And he meant it. The studio brought in a small team of animators who specialized in children's storytelling. They came to her home in Los Angeles, sat cross-legged on the floor with her, and listened as she explained her characters. Not just their names or colors, but their fears, their dreams. The lion with angel wings? His name was Nico. He was the guardian of a world called Color Veil, where everything changed based on emotion. Forests turned blue when people cried, mountains grew taller when people overcame fear, and the rivers glowed purple during moments of forgiveness. It wasn't just art. It was philosophy. It was Marisol's way of seeing life. Over the next 6 months, the studio developed pilot scripts, concept art, and early animations. They flew Marisol and Anna to meetings in San Francisco and New York. Jason joined some virtually, offering feedback, encouraging her when she felt overwhelmed, even voicing a side character, a bumbling dragon named Stumpy, who kept tripping over his own tail. Everyone loved Stumpy. The buzz around the show, titled The Colors of Marisol, began long before it even aired. Studio insiders said it reminded them of Inside Out meets Avatar, The Last Airbender, but with the heart of and Frank's Diary, gentle, raw, and deeply human. And yet, while the outside world cheered, celebrated, and waited, behind the scenes, something dark was quietly returning. It started with exhaustion, more than usual. Marisol would come home from creative meetings and fall asleep before dinner. Then came the fevers, the bruises on her arms that took too long to fade. And finally, a fainting spell that left her dizzy and confused. Anna knew. She tried not to panic, tried to believe it was just the stress or a bug or anemia. But in her heart, she recognized the signs. They rushed to the hospital. Tests were done. Blood was drawn. And then came the doctor's face, the expression that no parent, no matter how experienced, can ever prepare for. "I'm so sorry," he said softly. "The leukemia is back. It's aggressive." Anna clutched the edge of the exam table to keep from collapsing. Marisol sat in stunned silence, her sketchbook still open on her lap. The doctor continued, "We'll need to begin a new treatment plan immediately. This time, it will be harder. We're looking at full-body radiation, followed by a bone marrow transplant, if we can find a match." Anna couldn't breathe. The news spread to the studio within hours. And within minutes after that, Jason was on the phone. "What do you need?" he asked. Anna couldn't speak. She handed the phone to Marisol, who was staring at the wall, her voice a whisper. "It's back." Jason paused. "Okay," he said. "Then we fight again." But it wasn't that simple. Marisol's immune system was weak. Her body had already endured months of chemo. The doctors warned them, there's a risk, a real one. For the first time, the girl who had faced cameras, stages, and hospital beds with unshakable courage crumbled. "I don't want to go through it again," she said one night, curled under the covers, her beanie resting on the nightstand. I thought we beat it." Anna sat beside her, holding her hand. "We did, Mija, but sometimes it comes back for one more fight. And we have to be stronger. I don't know if I can." Jason flew in the next day. He didn't knock. Anna opened the door to find him standing there with his sleeves rolled up, a duffel bag over his shoulder, and a look of fierce determination on his face. "I'm not leaving until she believes she can do this," he said. For the next 5 days, Jason stayed with them. He cooked simple meals, helped tidy up the living room, and sat beside Marisol as she went through the first sessions of radiation. He even shaved his head again, not that he needed to, but just to make her laugh. And then, one night, he told her a story. Not about Hollywood, not about stunt doubles or red carpets, but about his mother. "How many people know I was a diver before I ever made a movie?" he asked. Marisol blinked, like diving into pools. He nodded. "I trained for years, competed for England. And my mom, she was there at every meet, cheering from the bleachers, even when she was sick. One year, she got really ill. Cancer. But she never told me. She didn't want me to worry. She beat it, but I'll never forget what she said to me afterward." "What?" She said, "Sometimes the world throws you into the deep end with no warning. And you either sink or you swim until your arms fall off." Marisol smiled. Did she really say that? She did. And I say it to myself every time I feel like quitting. He leaned closer, gently tapping her sketchbook. "You've already swum through more than most adults ever will. You don't have to be fearless, kid. Just keep kicking." That night, Marisol didn't sleep. She stayed up drawing something new, something she hadn't dared try before. It was a portrait of herself, but not how she looked now. How she wanted to look? Tall, glowing, hair flowing in the wind, standing atop a hill in color veil with the lion Nico behind her and Stumpy flying in the sky. She titled it, "When I Win." And that was the shift. Not a miracle, not a cure, but a choice. She chose to fight. The treatments resumed. The studio paused the series without question. Fans were told the delay was temporary. "Our artist is fighting a bigger battle," they wrote on Instagram, and were standing with her every step of the way. Donations flooded in again. Not for medical bills this time, but for hospitals across the country who needed better pediatric cancer wards. Inspired by Marisol, several nonprofit foundations began donating art supplies to children in treatment, launching something called the Marisol Method, art therapy sessions where kids were encouraged to draw their battles, fears, and dreams. But the real test came with the bone marrow transplant. They searched for weeks. Anna wasn't a match. Jason offered to get tested immediately, but he wasn't either. Dozens of fans even volunteered, but no matches. Time was running out. Then, in an unexpected twist, a match was found. A young woman in Spain, just 19 years old, named Lucia Delgado. She had registered as a donor on a whim after seeing Marisol's viral video months earlier. Lucia cried when the clinic told her she was the match. She flew to Los Angeles to complete the donation. She asked to meet Marisol only once. Not for cameras, not for press. They met in a quiet hospital room. The two of them hugged, then sat beside each other and drew on napkins. Marisol gave her a picture of Nico. Lucia gave her a sketch of Phoenix. No words, just hearts. The transplant was successful. Recovery was brutal. Pain, nausea, sleepless nights. But slowly, day by day, Marisol's blood counts rose. Her immune system rebuilt. Her hair began to grow, thin and wispy at first, but it was hers. And on the final day of her post-transplant isolation, as the doctor walked in with a wide grin and no clipboard, Anna clutched her breath. He said just one word, remission. Anna collapsed into tears. Marisol whispered, "I get to finish the show now." Jason, who was on speakerphone, shouted, "Yes, UDO." The premiere took place on a crisp fall evening in downtown Los Angeles. Exactly 1 year after Marisol had first set up her small art stand outside the farmer's market with a handwritten sign that read, $2 or more to help me fight cancer. No one could have imagined then that this tiny girl with thinning hair and a box of crayons would, in just 12 months, be standing at the entrance of a red carpet event in her honor, her name lit up in giant letters on the glowing marquee. The Colors of Marisol series premiere. It wasn't a glitzy, overproduced Hollywood circus. No screaming fans. No paparazzi flashing their cameras for gossip columns. Marisol had made one thing clear. If this show was going to be shared with the world, it needed to stay about hope, healing, and heart, not hype. So the studio listened. The venue was transformed into a whimsical version of Colorvale, the imaginary world Marisol had birthed from hospital beds, chemo chairs, and napkin sketches. Velvet hills and pastel trees lined the hallways. Interactive screens showed children how to paint their emotions in real time. And on the ceiling hung a giant projection of Nico, the winged lion, flying across a sky filled with glittering constellations made of brush strokes. Marisol arrived in a simple white dress with embroidered flowers along the sleeves. Her short, soft curls were tucked behind her ears, her smile shy but steady. She held Anna's hand as they stepped through the doors, their silhouettes bathed in the warm, golden light of the evening sun. Jason walked beside them, dressed in his usual understated way. Dark suit, no tie, his energy calm and protective. He looked more like a bodyguard than a celebrity, and he liked it that way. The moment belonged to her, not him. The crowd inside rose to their feet the moment she entered. Not out of obligation, not because of celebrity influence, but because she earned it. The applause echoed like thunder in a sacred canyon. Marisol's eyes went wide. Her chest fluttered, and then she smiled wider than she had in months. They sat in the front row of the auditorium. The lights dimmed, and for the first time ever, the world was introduced to Colorvale. The screen faded from black to a swirl of emotion-fueled color. The first image, a little girl standing atop a hill, looking at a horizon that shimmered and changed depending on her heartbeat. Her name wasn't explicitly Marisol, but those who knew. The story that unfolded was deeply personal. In episode 1, the girl loses color from her world when she falls sick. But instead of darkness, she finds herself gifted with the ability to give color back to others. With each act of kindness, each brave choice, she repaints the world piece by piece. The lion Nico is her guide. The dragon Stumpy, voiced hilariously by Jason, tries to help but mostly causes chaos. Laughter echoed, then tears, then stunned silence. By the end of the 22-minute pilot, the entire auditorium sat breathless. And then, like a wave crashing down, the crowd rose again, cheering, crying, clapping. Some parents held their children a little tighter. Some survivors in the audience quietly wiped their cheeks. A group of pediatric nurses from Cedars-Sinai hugged each other in the back row. Jason leaned toward Marisol and whispered, "You just gave hope to 1 million people." But the night wasn't over. As the applause died down, the host returned to the stage. "We have one more surprise," he announced, gesturing toward the side of the stage. "Jason, would you please join us?" Jason looked confused but stood anyway, walking up to the mic. "Normally I don't do speeches," he began, scratching the back of his neck. "But I made a promise to someone that if she survived this year, I'd make her dream go even further than she ever thought it could." He looked out at Marisol, who tilted her head in curiosity. That little sidewalk art stand? That wasn't the start of a moment. It was the start of a movement. "And tonight I want to announce something new." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small plaque. "It's official," he said. "Together with the studio, Kayla Cheng's foundation, and generous donors around the world, we are launching the Marisol Foundation for Healing Through Art, a global nonprofit providing art therapy, medical support, and emotional healing spaces for children battling illness." He paused, then smiled. "And its first headquarters will be built in downtown LA, on the very sidewalk where this whole story began." Gasps echoed through the crowd. Anna covered her mouth in shock. Marisol blinked twice, unsure if she'd heard correctly. Jason nodded toward her. "And if she says yes, Marisol will serve as creative director. We'll help build art programs in hospitals around the world. Every piece of curriculum, every tool, every class, based on her vision. Because this world needs more color. And this girl, she's the brightest shade of all." The audience exploded again. Marisol stood, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. She walked to the stage, hugged Jason so tightly he had to steady himself, and whispered, "Yes. Yes to all of it." The press picked it up the next morning. From cancer to color veil. The little girl who inspired a movement. Jason Statham's greatest role yet. Mentor and friend. The girl who fought with crayons just changed the world. But the headlines weren't what mattered. What mattered came weeks later, when the first branch of the Marisol Foundation opened at a children's hospital in Ohio. A 7-year-old boy who hadn't spoken in days suddenly asked for red paint. A 9-year-old girl in chemotherapy drew herself holding hands with a winged lion. In room after room, around the world, color returned. And every one of those drawings, those little masterpieces of healing, was signed with a nod to the movement that made it all possible. They didn't write her full name, just 4 letters. Emirai. Because in the hearts of thousands of children, Marisol had become something greater than an artist. She had become a symbol of courage, of resilience, of the breathtaking power of a single act of kindness. A stranger who stopped on a sidewalk, saw something more, and decided not to walk away. Years later, at a global conference for creative therapy, a young woman in her 20s took the stage. Her curls were longer now, her voice stronger, her presence undeniable. She told her story, as she always did, with truth, with hope, and with a drawing. And as the final slide came up behind her, when a lion with angel wings flying across a rainbow, she said, "I fought cancer with crayons. I beat fear with brushes. And I found my voice when someone took the time to listen. I'm not here because I was brave every day. I'm here because someone believed I could be." Never underestimate what one moment can do, because a moment saved my life. And somewhere in the crowd, an older Jason Statham stood quietly in the back, arms crossed, eyes misty. He didn't need to be on stage, because the spotlight was finally, forever, where it belonged. On her, on Marisol, the little girl who drew a new world and invited the rest of us to color it with her.